So I was in the garage a minute ago, eating my breakfast, and I had a thought, and it pushed me to ask the Lord a question. And in asking this question, the Lord just began to reveal some things to me, and I began to just speak those things out loud. And in the middle of me talking, I said, you know what? This should be a video. Like, this should be a video. So let me tell you what me and the Lord talked about this morning and why I think that is very important for you to get in on this conversation. Okay, so I was in the garage a minute ago, and I was just thinking about the position I'm in right now and how, I'm working, right? A 9-to-5 job, even though God told me months ago that this wasn't for me. And I took this job anyway. And I sat there and I thought for a minute, and I said, okay, I took the job because I needed the money. And I began to think about how if, I had told this to, say, a pastor or something, I had told this conundrum to somebody who is, a Bible-believing Christian, how many of them would have said, God understands because you can't pay your bills. So he'll understand if you just go ahead and get a job, even though he told you not to. He'll understand because your bills have to get paid. So go ahead and take the job for now. That's what most people today would tell you, would have told me. That's what people were telling me. That's, what my husband was saying, you need a job. Where before he was talking about how, the Lord called me away from the job, and the Lord was, he believed that the Lord had really spoken to me and told me to leave my prior job. But when things got hard, he made the comment and said, maybe that wasn't God. You need to get a job because the bills aren't getting paid. And if you go back into my videos, you'll see around that time how I was making these videos about, having to go to the laundromat because in the middle of me obeying God, things in the house were breaking down. So in the middle of me leaving my job and losing one income because I was obedient to God, things in my house were breaking down. Like the washing machine, it broke down first, and then the dryer. So we were left without a washing machine or a dryer, which meant we had to go to the laundromat, which meant that we were spending extra money that we really didn't have to try to wash our clothes. There were many times where our parents took our clothes for us. Like my mom would take them sometimes, his mom would take them sometimes, to try to alleviate the laundromat conundrum that we had going on. So we were in a bond, and in the middle of being in that bond, things were all kind of spiritual warfare was popping up during that time. And it got rough to the point where I made a video about not having enough money to even go and buy soup, right? So, and the point of me doing that was just to be real with y'all. Around that time when I made that video about needing soup, and around the time where I made that video, the next video where I was talking about the lie we grew up believing and how it keeps us stuck. When I made that video actually brought in a lot of subscribers. It's actually still my best performing video to date, at least. Not hundreds of thousands of views, but about 2,000 views, which for my small channel, that was a lot of views. And around that time is when the job popped up that I have now, the job that the Lord did not tell me to go and get, it popped up. And that particular video, the lie we all grew up believing, the best video to date that has done well on my channel, that was the last video that I did for several months, because right after that I got a job. And I can only imagine what would have happened if I had continued to make videos after that. Continue to build upon that momentum that I started. Continue to dig into the fact that I didn't have any money. Continue to be real with y'all and let y'all know, look, in the middle of me not having money, things are still okay because God put me here. This is where I'm supposed to be. Like, yeah, I might be a little bit behind on my bills, but does that mean that God's word changed? Does that mean that he really didn't mean what he say? Because when he told me to do something, things got worse, right? Because that's what happened. When he told me to quit my job, things didn't immediately get better. Things started getting worse. They started getting worse. But in the middle of all that, I was still believing in him, but the people around me, not so much. Not so much. So I want to talk about that. Because when I was thinking about that in the garage a minute ago, I thought to myself and said, the issue at the time was that it was hard to believe God and do what he wanted me to do, because what he told me to do was hurting my flesh. What he was telling me to do was hurting my husband's flesh. What he was telling me to do came with challenges. What he was telling me to do was hard. He told me to leave my job. And most people would think, well, if he told you to leave your job and start your own business, everything is going to be great. Well, no. When he told me to leave my job, I knew that I would have to build up my audience. And I knew that in building up my audience, that I wasn't going to be able to like make any money, because you have to first get people to trust you. Like, I knew that. I knew it was going to take some time. However, my husband, he didn't understand that one. And he was just like, I can't pay these bills by myself. You gonna have to get a job. And so how do we go when God tells us to do something? How do we do it successfully? How do we get our flesh to want to do it? Because the problem is our flesh, right? So he told me to leave my job and start building up, my social medias, my YouTube specifically. And when he told me to do it, I had a little money saved up that I was able to use, but after that, it got really hard. On top of it getting hard and us not having any money, things in the house started breaking down. It's not where I wanted to be. It's not where my husband wanted me to be. It's not where I wanted my family to be, right? I'm sitting here with a master's degree, not working, trying to build something that God told me to build, but we're living paycheck to paycheck. We're going in the red every month. We don't have any money in the bank account. We don't have any savings. Any savings that we've had to use, right? And I'm sitting there wondering what to do. And I thought to the Lord, I said, Lord, what do I do in that situation? Like, how do you, if you tell somebody to do something, how does that person do it? What is the key to just stepping out and getting it done? What is the key to not procrastinating when the Lord speaks? What is the key? And the Lord took me back to, okay, well, the problem is our flesh, and how our flesh doesn't want to, first of all, our flesh doesn't want to do anything that requires a lot of work. So if it requires a lot of work, automatically our flesh is not going to want to do it. No, the next thing is if it's anything that stops us from getting what we want, even for a short amount of time, our flesh is not going to want to do it. For instance, my mind went to my situation where I had to go without money. So the Lord told me to do my own thing, leave my job, but it meant I would have to go without money. Going without money is hard, y'all. Especially when you're used to having a certain amount of money. You're used to getting your bills paid at a certain time. You're used to A, B, and C. I mean, I have a couple of credit cards I had to get paid. All of a sudden, it was hard for me to pay them. And I had to put my needs to the side and my wants to the side for a minute. It was hard. It was challenging. And my flesh didn't like it. My husband's flesh, Darius's flesh, didn't like it. And I said, well, how do we get to the point where we're able to push our flesh down And I asked the Lord that, and the Lord he spoke to my heart. He just allowed me to speak the truth. And I said, you know what? That's a simple one. The key is fasting and praying. Literally fasting and praying. Why is fasting and praying the key? Well, when you are fasting, you are delaying gratification from the very thing that you need to survive. When you're fasting, you are delaying gratification of a basic need. Like the most basic need is to eat, and of course to drink water, but to eat. You have to eat to survive. So if you are denying your flesh a basic need, you are training not only your flesh, but also your spirit. You're training your flesh to be subdued, and you are training your spirit to be enhanced and to wake up. You are training your spirit to be in control, and you are training your flesh to be in subjection. So normally in everyday life, because we are born in sin, our flesh is our king. When you are fasting, you are putting that flesh under subjection. How do you know you're putting that flesh under subjection? Because one of the basic needs of your flesh is to eat. And when your flesh is not getting that, your flesh is screaming out loud and saying, okay, I want to eat right now. But your spirit is saying, no, we gonna wait. We gonna wait. And so you're making your flesh pipe down for a minute. You're making your flesh pipe down for a minute. And so if you are able to put your flesh under subjection through fasting, then once you were outside of fasting, it's not so hard to put your wants under subjection, because you have trained your flesh to put a basic need under subjection. It is not so challenging to put your wants under subjection. And so you might say, well, in my case, the need or the want was money. Some people say money is a need. Some people say money is a want. Okay, we know in the grand scheme of things that we need money, of course. However, money is not a basic need. Your basic needs are the things that you have to survive no matter what. And I'm going to explain why money is not a basic need. We know money is not a basic need because we can think about this logically. If there is a woman who has, say, 3 kids, and her kids and her she and her kids are poor. They don't have any money. They don't have any food. They don't have anything. Like, they're just poor and they really need money. If that woman goes out and she sees in front of her food and she also sees money, and she's only able to take one of the two, if she chooses food, you're going to have compassion on her. Even though she stole it, you're going to say, well, she was hungry. Her kids was hungry. I actually understand why she did what she did. However, if she stops, doesn't take the food, and instead takes the money, you're not going to have as much compassion on her. Because you're going to say, well, if she was really hungry, if she really needed it, she would have taken the bread. She would have taken the food. She wouldn't have taken just the money. Like, what are you going to do? And you can say, well, she would have just used the money for food. She would have just went and bought food somewhere. But when you really, really need something, when you're really, really hungry, you need something, you know that you're going to go to the food first. If you're that hungry, you're going to go to the food first. You're not going to go to the money. You wouldn't have as much compassion. I mean, that's just human nature. When we see somebody stealing food, we think to ourselves, they're hungry. When we see somebody stealing money, we think to ourselves, they're greedy, right? Even if they don't have any money, you're still going to say they're greedy. Because we know, why? Because we know that our basic need is to eat, right? And so that's how I know that even though money in itself is, yes, can be a need, it's not a basic need, right? It's not something that we just have to have or we will die. Food is something we just have to have or we will die. If you don't eat, you're going to die. And so that's why we look at food a little differently than we look at money. And so with food being a basic need, if we're able to put our appetite under subjection, our appetite for food under subjection, we will be more easily able to put our appetite for everything else under subjection. Whatever it is. You know, there's a reason that the Lord said when you fast and pray. There's the reason that Jesus, our ultimate example, fasted and prayed a lot. It's because of what fasting do. It's because of what fasting does to both your flesh and your spirit. You know, if we can put that flesh under subjection, we are good to go. If my flesh is under subjection, when the Lord tells me to leave my job and things get hard, it's not so hard for me to continue to believe and trust in God, because no longer do I need that gratification immediately. Because I have taught to my flesh to delay gratification, I'm able to delay gratification even when the Lord has shown me the outcome, but it's not here yet. I'm able to wait and be patient with it. You know, I still say even today that I believe that if I had continued on just posting videos like the Lord told me to and not taking that job, I believe that I would be well off right now with YouTube. If I had just continued on that path, because, you know, everyone around me were thinking, okay, you're crazy. You don't have a job. You don't have any money. The Lord wouldn't put you through this. You need to get a job. He'll understand. Not realizing that maybe the position I was in was the testimony that he wanted me to let other people know about, so that other people who were in my position who didn't have it all would understand that you don't have to have it all when God tells you to do something. That he will reveal it in time. Maybe what I was going through was the testimony, right? Maybe what I was going through was the thing that people needed to see and hear. You know, I even, y'all, we in the South here. I even remember a pastor saying one time, he brought up, he brought up the fact of some people quitting their jobs because they believe they heard from God. And he was like, I'm not telling you to quit your job. Don't quit your job. It's almost like he got scared at the fact that somebody might quit their job and not have any money coming in. And that's where we've gotten to. We've gotten to the point where we're able to say yes to God when our flesh feels good. We're able to say yes to God when it makes sense. We're able to say yes to God if money is coming in. We're able to say yes to God if we're blessed. We're able to say yes to God if everything is going well. But what about if the Lord tells us to do something and immediately everything goes wrong? Is it easy to continue to say yes to God then? Then what? Will you continue to say yes to God even when it hurts, when he tells you to do something? Like, will you continue to say yes to God if he tells you to quit your job, and all of a sudden when you quit your job, you don't have any money? All of a sudden when you quit your job, your everything starts breaking down in the house. Your washing machine starts breaking down. Your dryer starts breaking down. Somebody leaves a pizza box on the stove and you come home and the house is almost burnt down. Like, are you able to trust God even in the midst of not being able to pay your bills when he told you to leave your job? Or will you sit there and complain and say, Lord, you told me to quit my job, so why am I struggling? Like, will you complain to God and say that? Or will you go to God, get on your knees and say, Lord, you told me to quit this job, and though I am struggling, Though I am being slain right now, though I don't understand what you're doing, though I don't see how the outcome is going to come, I do know that I trust you. I do know that I did hear your voice, and I do know that you will come through for me in due time. Will you continue to trust God even then? Will you be able to delay gratification and say, well, I know these bills aren't being paid right now, but I know the Lord has a way. And I know that whatever he has for me is going to be bigger and better than I ever imagined. If I'm getting this much spiritual warfare coming against me, I know for a fact that he has something for me to do, that he has a word for me to say, that he has a spot for me to be in. And so this is important to me because this is my life, okay, right now, currently. This is my life currently. And I want you to know that it's not just all about your faith either. It's about the faith of the people who are around you. They are going to influence you more than you know. Even though I had the faith, even though I knew that God was going to turn things around, the way that my husband was coming at me and just stressed out and just, oh my God, I can't do this. You didn't hear from God. I take it back. I don't believe you heard from God. Get a job now. We need these bills to be paid. The way he was able to come around me and I have the same amount of faith as I did, it mattered. And I want to come to you and tell you that if you come to that point where you are with somebody, say your husband or your mom or your best friend, and you've done something that the Lord has told you to do, and it doesn't make sense to you or to anybody around you, in that moment, I just want you to step back and pray. Step back and pray. And even though I did step back and pray, what I stepped back and prayed for was that the Lord would allow me to get the job. I didn't step back and pray that the Lord would help my husband understand what he was telling me to do. I stepped back and prayed that the Lord would just help me to get the job, because I was like, okay, we do need money and I do have a master's degree. I should be working. One of the worst things in the world that can happen to you when God tells you to do something, one of the worst things in the world is for you to be capable of doing other things. My master's degree and the amount of experience I have to my name and the way that I am able to walk into a job and just get the job easily, based on the fact that I don't know. I'm just good at interviewing. I'm good at relating to people. I'm good at getting people to feel like they want me to work for them. Because I have that skill, that's like the worst thing to have when God is telling you to do something. Because now you have multiple things that you can do. I was talking about this with God earlier today in the garage. I was saying that, what was I saying? Let me get my words straight. Lord, Holy Ghost, help me. Let me just keep talking. Maybe it'll come to me. Because I was sitting there thinking about how, what was I saying? It was something I was saying specifically. Let me think back. So I was thinking about how I got the job, and how, this is what I was thinking about. When God tells you to do something, so in my situation, I can go back to me. When God told me to quit my job and do YouTube, the reason that was a dangerous game to play is because God was asking me to do something that I kind of wanted to do. So God was asking me to leave my job and go full out on YouTube and build there. And he gave me a strategy. He gave me the vision. He gave me everything. He was asking me to do that. The dangerous part about that is I then had to figure out if it was God telling me to leave my job or if it was my flesh telling me to leave my job. That's when you have to step back and pray and ask God to confirm his word. When you want something that God is opening the door for, you have to step back and pray and make sure that every step you make is ordered by God and not by your flesh, right? So in that moment when the Lord told me to leave my job, I had to step back and pray and ask God to confirm and say, Lord, is this really you, or is this just something I want to do? Because I want to get out there and do what I want to do. I went so far as to ask God to give Darius the same confirmation, my husband, because I knew he wouldn't want me. Normally, my husband is the budget guy. He's the one who pays all the bills. He doesn't want me, not that I don't care about the bills now, don't get me twisted, but he would never want me to just quit my job with like no backup plan. So, and that's what God was telling me to do. And so I said, Lord, when I tell Darius that, he's not going to go for this. So if this is really you, confirm it in him, confirm it in my husband. Y'all, when I first told Darius about me leaving my job, of course, he reacted the exact way I thought he was going to react. He immediately went crazy. Like, we can't do that. How is that going to work? We got bills to pay. And then he calmed down and I said, look, just pray about it. And he said, okay, I'll pray about it. Do y'all know that this guy came back like 2 days later and told me and said, I don't know how this is going to work out, Deandra, but I know some kind of way, I know it's going to work out. Like, I know that God is telling you to leave your job. So I am behind you 100%. Like, this guy came to me and confirmed what the Lord said, because he went and prayed about it and came back and said what I thought I would never hear him say. That's when I knew it was God, because I knew that this wasn't normally something he would say or something that he would even believe. And so I quit my job. And it wasn't until months later, when things weren't working out, that he came back to me and said, are you sure that really was God? I don't know if that was really God you heard. He changed his tune. So here's my point. My point is that when you want something that God is bringing to life in your life, bringing to life in your life, when you want something that God is giving you, be careful and make sure you are praying and confirming God's word before you move, because you want to make sure that you're moving in step with God and not just moving fast in your flesh. And this goes back to a recent word that I gave, where the Lord gave me this dream, and he basically said to me, you need to wait. Don't just move when you're ready to move, right? You have to wait. You have to always be in a lamb posture, meaning you have to be praying and fasting more than you are moving. If you are moving more than you are praying and fasting, if you are making moves and taking steps and making connections more than you are fasting and praying, baby, you are out of alignment. You're not living your life according to the way Jesus lived his life. Jesus always got a way to fast and pray. He didn't just make moves. He didn't just do A, B, and C. He got a way to fast and to pray. He got a way all the time to rest and fast and pray. He even got on his disciples when he was about to be crucified. He asked them, why are you asleep and not praying? I'm up praying. Why y'all asleep? Y'all don't even know what's going on right now, because you're not praying. You're out of alignment. You don't even know the things that are about to happen. If you were in prayer, you will be up with me knowing that some things are about to take place that the devil is in the midst of. And so this just takes me back, When the Lord tells you to do something, make sure he confirms his word, especially when it's something that you want. See, it's easy for us to know it's God when God tells us to do something that we don't want to do, such as when the Lord told me to leave my fiance years ago and take my 2 kids and move back home with my mama. Now, that was God, because that was something that my flesh didn't want. I know that was God. It's easy for those times, right, to understand that. But how do you do it when the Lord is telling you to do something that you really want to happen? How do you How do you walk in alignment with the spirit and not walk in alignment with your flesh? And so these are all things I was thinking about. If you haven't watched my video that I recently released about moving according to God's timing and not telling people all your business before it's time, not releasing your baby before the baby is ready to be birthed. Like, if y'all haven't heard that dream that the Lord gave me recently, please go watch that. I also made a threads post about it. I'll link that below. There was a lot of good comments on that post. I think it got like 60,000 views or so. So y'all go in and look at that post if you have threads and if you have time. But this was just a word the Lord gave me today. You know, how do you battle your flesh when God tells you to do something? You fast and pray. You get your flesh under subjection with your basic needs. You get your flesh under subjection with the need to eat. And after that, it will be easier to get your flesh under subjection with the things that you desire. You'll be able to distinguish between spirit and flesh. You'll be able to push your flesh down to get your flesh under subjection and to more clearly hear the spirit and what the spirit is telling you to say, how the spirit is telling you to move, when the spirit is telling you to move, and what steps you need to take and when. And you won't be so bogged down by what your flesh wants. Another remark I want to make before I close, y'all, is that, like I said before, your journey is affected by those who are right around you. So if you are married, there's a reason that Paul in the word says that it is better for you to be single. It's because when you are married, not only are you dealing with your flesh, you're now dealing with your husband's flesh. You're now dealing with your wife's flesh, right? And you're going to be in this battle where Satan is going to always be trying to trip you up, especially if you're called by God for a specific purpose. He's always going to try to use the people closest to you to trip you up, right? And he's going to try to twist the word around. For instance, the word says that God is not the author of confusion. So I commonly use that in my household with my husband, saying that if something is confusing, it's not of God. So I need to get it in alignment with God. Like if we can't agree on something, then we need to go before the Father and get into agreement. And Satan basically took that and turned it over his head the last time when we were struggling. And he just was like, look, you know, this confusion ain't of God. So go ahead and get a job. When I should have been like, yeah, this confusion ain't of God. Let me get on my knees and pray with my husband. Because God needs to reveal again to him what he already revealed to both of us. Because he obviously never forgot. And so there's a way that you fight your battles. And I cannot say this enough. And I know I sound like a broken record. But fasting and praying is the thing to do. Fasting and prayer is the thing to do. Of course, you want to pray all the time. But if you come, especially when you come to a point where it seems like prayer is just not getting it, fasting is where it's at. Fasting is the key to unlock your prayers. Okay, I promise you, it is. And I just wish I had done that before I got my job, before I took that job, because y'all, now I'm in this job, and even though the Lord has given me a way out, and He's given me kind of this plan to get out, I feel like I've delayed my calling. I feel like everything is like out of alignment and out of whack. We're making more money than we ever made before, but we've never been more unhappy, I feel. So, I'm working longer hours. I'm never at home. I'm just not happy. And so just do what God tells you to do. Regardless of what other people say, just do what the Lord commands you to do, especially in this season right now. With that said, I want you guys to keep praying for me, and I'm going to keep coming to you guys On top of that, I would like to say that even on top of all of that, even though we're making way more money than we've ever made before, we're still living paycheck to paycheck, y'all. Like, it don't even matter. We still not blessed like we should be blessed. And so, anyway, that's all I wanted. I love you guys so much. Can't wait to talk to you more. Peace. Bye.